Hi, I'm Justin Janetzko. I'm a former educator and chaplain for the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and now mostly interested in aspects of humanism.
Hi, I'm Kris Bobbianco. I grew up in the Seventh-day Adventist community and enjoy challenging myself and growing through conversations.
Welcome to the Talus Slopes podcast.
If you're questioning the legitimacy of your Christian experience, you're not alone. We've been there too.
That's why we're here. We're going to call out and condemn the toxic behavior and senseless narratives perpetuated by Christians, and we'll provide credible counterpoints and bring the receipts.
Join us as we confront and weigh in on some of the craziest things Christians think, say, and do that often go unchecked.
Here on the Talus Slopes podcast.
Going like a half an hour rant without even recording.
Let's get together. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I forgot about that.
I don't want to hear the music right now. Okay. We're back.
Hello.
Hello.
It
Okay.
felt like you were about to sing a song there.
Well, no, I already sang a song. I sang Let's Get Together by
Yeah.
Haley Mills and the Haley Mills duo, which was her and herself. The Parent Trap, right?
Yeah.
You probably saw the Lindsay Lohan one.
I saw both. Are you
'cause
kidding me?
You're a freshling.
I've seen both.
Which is your favorite?
I think both of them had different parts that were good. I liked the Lindsay Lohan one, like when they were playing the tricks on the potential stepmom.
I've never
I thought
seen
that
it.
was great. What?
I saw
You
the
have
original
to.
Haley Mills.
The original one is pretty good, and I do like parts of it. Okay, but you're getting me distracted.
All right, we are
No.
back with the Ted Wilson video. Why are we talking about
I don't know.
Parent Trap?
This just happens with like anytime we record.
All right, instead of Parent Trap, let's get to a theological thirst trap with the taking a bold stand on human sexuality message from Pastor Ted Wilson of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. We continue on because it is our duty in life to refute. It feels like literally everything that this man is saying. This is our 5th episode in the series on this video, and we are a minute and 51 seconds in
It's wild.
the 12.5-minute long video. But there's some like musical bumpers and stuff like that too. So
That's fair.
we're practically almost done. Not really.
No.
Yeah, so if you're joining us and this is your first time hearing about this video, you'll probably want to go back and look at the
Yeah.
Christians and LGBTQIA plus video series. I've labeled those accordingly. And if you haven't seen this video yet, please check it out before you listen. The link is in the show notes, in the episode notes for this episode. But we're going to continue on. Full disclosure, we're going to listen to something that we listened to last week again, just as a refresher, because there's more that Kris and I want to say about what we've already listened to. I mentioned I mentioned last episode that I could spend 5 hours, I think was the exact number I gave, just breaking down the one sentence that he says,
Right.
or a couple sentences that he says. So we are going to probably not spend 5 hours, but we are going to spend a little bit more time talking about some of these things that this man has said. And I'm just going to put this on right now. I rewound a little bit, so you should be able to recognize maybe what he's saying.
So God blessed the newly created couple, and his first instruction to them was to be fruitful and multiply. This command, of course, can only be fulfilled between a male and a female.
Okay, we're going to stop it right there. So Wilson just used the phrase, this command. And what is the command?
Be fruitful and multiply.
Be fruitful and multiply, which means what?
Get together, have sex, and have
Let's
babies.
get together. Yeah.
No, not doing that again.
No, not that one again. Kris, what do you think Wilson is trying to say here to his audience?
It feels as if, since it's phrased as this command, if you are unable to be fruitful and multiply, as he says, you are unable to fulfill the command of God.
When I was a kid, whenever I heard fruitful, all I heard was fruit fly. Be fruit fly and multiply.
That's funny.
They do that. Yeah, I mean, what I think Wilson is trying to say is basically this is not just something. This is not a recommendation.
Right,
This
this is a necessity.
Command.
Yeah.
When God gives you a command, you best listen.
Yeah.
Because God pointed the finger and he said, be fruitful and multiply.
Free fruit fly and multiply. I mean, but you have to consider that these were literally the only two people on Earth, according to the story. So,
No, there's plenty of problems with the idea thinking that this applies to literally everybody. We'll get into that,
Right.
probably not today at all, but
Okay, I'm
down
sorry.
the road. Like I said, we could spend hours just talking about this whole idea of a command. But the other thing that I think Wilson is trying to say is that only men and women can biologically procreate. Only, he said, male and female can biologically procreate. And so anything outside of that binary is bad and sinful and maybe even evil.
you know what's funny to me is there are instances. Wow. Okay.
Kris.
There are lots of instances. There are lots of instances. There we go, where people who are queer are able to procreate. So what about them?
Well,
Is that okay, Ted Wilson? It happens.
he's going to find a way to answer that that is going to just kind of stack his own argument.
I guess, but it's just funny when you think about how this argument could be answered so easily.
But Kris, to that point, of course, because it's all fluid.
Right.
It's all fluid, but he thinks that there is a binary that should exist, and if there is some sort of procreation happening there, that could. I'm not even sure that Ted Wilson, and in this case, he's representing all conservatives, not by his own admission. That's what we're saying in his arguments. But that not all procreation is necessarily good. It would need to be within the structure that God has planned for us in his perfect plan of the Genesis account. And so maybe that's how he would address that. I'm not
sure.
know exactly, but that's not even necessarily the point right now. Well, I guess kind of it is, because when Christians bring this up, and I mentioned this previously, I think that they think it's a gotcha.
Right. It's like oh, haha, look at that.
Well, what say you now, you gay men or women or whoever you are?
Right.
What say you now?
It was just the way he emphasized male and female.
Yeah, it's the classic Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve, which Christians are so proud when they say that, only because it rhymes.
Right.
But I've said this in the past. Yeah, we get that. We do actually understand how biology works, and actually biology is going to be a problem for them, for the conservatives in this text, but we'll, like I said, get to that a little bit later. I don't think that there is a single queer person out there that doesn't acknowledge that men and women exist and that they can, for the most part, unless you can't, procreate. And I don't think that there's anybody out there that thinks that two biological males can procreate or females can procreate in the sense traditionally, right?
Right.
We're not debating that at all.
Very true.
So when he brings that up, it's just like it feels like a nothing burger to me. It's just like, yeah, no, that's good. We're not arguing against that.
Right.
We're arguing for human rights.
Exactly.
For people that do not fit your binary.
Exactly. It's very interesting to me how, like, people, especially within the LGBTQIA plus community, they're always well, not always, I shouldn't say that. They're usually focused on being more inclusive of the fluidity and beauty of the differences in gender and sex and orientation, all of that. But a lot of Christian people, and in this scenario, Ted Wilson, is very restrictive in what can be considered biological and natural. So, coming from one angle that's restriction and the other one that's fluidity and acceptance.
But again, he's reading the Bible plainly, and it says man and woman.
Okay.
So he's not really interested or motivated to think beyond what could the other possibilities be.
Fair enough. It
Yeah.
just seems sad to me. Like, he's missing so much beauty in the world. That's all I'm saying.
So, look, if the ultimate goal here from this text is reproduction in a relationship, I think you're going to run into some issues applying that, practically speaking. If you're saying that the only God-approved relationships are the ones that can and do procreate, then that would even have to exclude some straight individuals. If we or anybody are going to decide that the creation story in Genesis is prescriptive instead of descriptive. In other words, if we're going to say that this is exactly what God wants for every single person ever.
I see. Okay.
And
the perfect
this is
scenario.
the perfect plan and what God had originally intended, instead of just saying this is what happened in the creation account that, in this case, Christians believe in. It's describing what happened, and we can kind of come up with our own conclusions or arrive at our own conclusions regarding that quote-unquote history. You're going to continually run into issues applying that prescription consistently, right?
Right.
Is singleness a violation of this command then?
Technically, yeah. Well, I do think that there are Christian individuals, I've even heard this when I was still part of the church, where they felt excluded from the church community because they were single.
No, Christians deal with singles the worst out of any group I've ever seen, trying to figure out what do we do with our,
right,
quote unquote, figure out what do we do with our
older single people. Like when you get into young adults and then past, it seems like it's more taboo to be single.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Like, part of me feels like they kind of give up on them in a lot of ways. Just like, oh, that's so-and-so. Yeah, they're single, whatever. Because I don't know. What I used to see a lot of within the conservative Christian movement was the singles ministries, where they're not actually trying to necessarily meet singles where they're at in their singleness. They are trying to hook them up.
That is very true.
And that doesn't seem, at least for me personally, and this is anecdotal, of course, but I've not seen that for older.
It's the first Monday of the month.
Oh, it is. I've not seen that. There's a tornado drill going on. I have not seen that for older single individuals in the church.
That's true. Okay. Fair enough.
But I don't know, maybe I'm wrong or right or whatever on that. But the point is, it's still something that does not follow. Again, if this is a command from God, like we would look at the 10 Commandments and say, well, those apply to everybody. Is this one of those? It doesn't appear in the 10 Commandments, but Ted Wilson still considers it to be, and many conservative Christians do, a command. Christians get very weird when it comes to singleness. But it is a truth within our reality. And it's one that I think, I don't know, if you're reading the Bible plainly, by the time you get to 1 Corinthians 7, Paul, I don't know, isn't he encouraging Christians to stay single?
Yes.
I don't know, when I read that plainly, it seems like he's saying things like, hey, it would be better if you're not married.
To stay not married.
Just stay not married. He says that would be a good thing. Well, what now? Isn't that in direct violation of this quote-unquote command from Genesis? See, to me, reading that plainly, reading it just as it appears, and assuming I can just plug it right into my context today in 2024, to me, that seems like a major conflict. And which one am I going to listen to?
Obviously, the leader of the church,
Well, because you can make all sorts of arguments like, well, that was the Old Testament and that was before sin. And here we have the New Testament and it's a completely different, but it's more applicable to us today because it was more recent. And
well, it just kind of shows how you can pull apart texts and use them to fit your narrative.
What about Jesus? Their actual God, who is also single. And I know that conservatives will argue, well, that's not why Jesus came to this earth.
But then aren't they admitting that different people have different purposes?
Yeah, maybe.
That's what it seems like to me.
To me, when I hear that, I'm just like, okay, I guess that's fair. Jesus's whole point was to apparently die in his early 30s after just doing a ministry for, traditionally speaking, 3.5 years. Nobody's doing that. I mean, I think that pastorship would be a lot lower as far as occupancy is concerned if at the end of 3.5 years you just died.
Yeah.
But so they'll always kind of punt to the whole, well, Jesus was different because Jesus was God and he was doing a different work. But
Okay,
like,
but
still,
again,
go ahead.
That includes differences. That means that there are scenarios when something else applies by their own definition.
But I'm just like, yeah, if did Jesus not keep the other commands of God? Why not this one? It just makes sense. If he was here to show us how to live our lives on this planet, and marriage and procreation for everybody, I'm saying for everybody, obviously some people got to do it, otherwise we're in some trouble. But across the board for everybody, it doesn't seem as if that's a huge... At least it doesn't seem like that's what Jesus is trying to teach about.
Right. Well, I mean, everyone also, at least in the Christian church, my experience at least, was always telling me that Jesus was perfect. So if Jesus was perfect and kept all the commandments of God, but didn't keep this one, was it actually a commandment?
It's not a command.
That's what
it
I'm
doesn't
saying.
matter what the language says. Like, it's... You cannot hold that opinion across the board consistently.
Yes.
It just peters out at some point. And I don't think that most conservative Christians even are willing to hold everybody accountable to that quote unquote command.
No, of course not.
As they would to other commands of God, and even then they're not necessarily willing to. Jesus is like, hey, maybe you should love your enemies, and they're just like, maybe
nah.
not. But look, okay, when I read Paul is in the camp of Jesus. He's forsaking the creation prescription for the sake of the gospel, for the work that he thinks is very important to do because time is short.
Yes.
Because
Time is short.
the coming of the Son of Man is right around the corner, which I feel like a lot of conservatives, including Ted Wilson, wholly believe. At least that's what they say they believe. Do they really believe it?
Who knows?
Well, hold on a second. Let's actually read what Paul says about this in the book of 1 Corinthians, or as Donald Trump would say, 1 Corinthians. It's my favorite. Actually, all of it's my favorite. Because it's all so good. Like me. 1 Corinthians 7. You guys can go and read this for yourselves, and you can walk away and see what, you determine what you think it means, right? That's your liberty to do that. But I do want to read this. And again, I'm going to read this plainly, as our friend Ted Wilson and many other conservatives desire to read other passages such as Romans 1 or Leviticus 18. We got to read it plainly, folks. Kris, are you reading it plainly? Sinner. Let's start at verses 25 through 31, because he talks a lot about, to the married, to the unmarried, it is good for you to stay unmarried as I am. This is under the heading concerning the unmarried. Now, he says, about virgins. What about virgins, Paul? He says, I have no command from the Lord. Okay, so he's admitting
This is not a command.
This is my personal take.
Right.
This is not a command from the Lord. Well, what is the command from the Lord? I don't know what he's talking about.
Yeah, I'm not sure,
I'm not sure if he's
actually.
talking about Genesis.
I think he's just saying, hey, this is my, well, I mean, obviously I don't know him, but it sounds to me like this is, hey, this is my opinion. This is my personal take on this. But obviously God didn't give me this as a command. So take it with a grain of salt.
But like if he's reading this the way that Ted Wilson, if he understands, let me put it this way. If he understands Genesis as Ted Wilson does, that's a command. And what Paul is saying is just like, I don't care. Here's my opinion on it.
I see. Okay.
And he's like Christianity's leading theologian beyond Jesus.
Very true.
I don't even know if you can call Jesus a leading Christian theologian, because Jesus wasn't a Christian. He was Christ. But you know what I mean. They look at
Christ in Christian.
but they look at Paul as being the smack, right? He is the one that we listen to, the one that really helps us understand Jesus better. But even he's just like, this is just my opinion. He says, but I give a judgment as one who is by the Lord's mercy is trustworthy. He's like, you can trust me.
Interesting.
He says, because of the present crisis, I think that it is good for a man to remain as he is. In other words, not married
Right.
because of the present crisis. Conservative Christians, and I'm talking like, again, I think about the Seventh-day Adventist Church where this video is coming from. They believe that we are in a present crisis. I promise you, do any research into the Seventh-day Adventist Church and you will find third-party Adventist ministries that are always talking about
The end of the world.
The end of the world.
The end of times.
The time is short. This coming we are in a crisis right now. Okay. Are you saying that you're in the same position as Paul here? Well, that's interesting. He doesn't think that people should be getting married, but that's not good enough for you. He continues, are you pledged to a woman? Do not seek to be released.
Be released.
What loving
Dang.
words.
Okay.
Are you free from such a commitment? Do not look for a wife. But if you do marry, you have not sinned. And a virgin marries, she has not sinned. But those who marry will face many troubles in this life, and I want to spare you this.
That's so wild.
Okay, I'm not even going to get into all that. But again, let's just read it plainly. What I mean, brothers and sisters, is that time is short. He says it again. Time is short. Why does Paul say that? Paul is convinced that the coming of the Son of Man is imminent.
Soon.
Yep.
Very soon.
He thinks it's in his lifetime. Does
As do
Ted
many
Wilson
people.
think that?
Probably.
He might, or at least in the lifetime of individuals that he's speaking to through this video.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. From now on, those who have wives should live as if they do not. Further on down, he says, I would like you to be free from concern. An unmarried man is concerned about the Lord's affairs, how he can please the Lord. All right, I want to stop right there. Isn't that what these pastors should be doing?
You would think so, because they're the head of church and Christianity, spreading the word of the Lord.
Like, that seems to be the thing that they say they value the most from the pulpit. The reason why I am a pastor is so that I can take the good news, the gospel, to maybe the world, but at least to my community. It's the thing that's most important. Well, Paul says here, then you should remain unmarried so you can fully dedicate. You should they always talk about sacrifice. You should sacrifice a married life because you firmly believe that the Lord is coming soon and you need to get that word out.
Well, what's funny to me is hearing this, I'm thinking, okay, I know realistically this is a terrible thing to think. Like you're going to have well, listen.
I shouldn't say this. It's going to get me in trouble.
Well, no. I have a point. It seems like a terrible thing to say. Like every single person who leads in a church or any kind of religious organization can't be married. Well, obviously that's a terrible thing to ask of anyone.
Right, yeah,
To give up
absolutely.
love and family.
Exactly.
But that's exactly what they're doing to the queer community.
No, that's the point. We would never ask Ted Wilson to give up his love for his wife. That's
exactly.
ridiculous.
Like you can hear how ridiculous it sounds, but that's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah. No, the hypocrisy is unreal.
Yes.
Because when I read the Bible plainly, Paul is saying, look, if you are going to be in a, pastoral role. Now you could also say, well, Paul also talks about how you should be a man who is married to one woman, but that is like assuming that you are married, right?
Right.
His other advice here is don't get married at all. In fact, he continues to say, he said, a married man, this is verse 33 of 1 Corinthians 7, but a married man is concerned about the affairs of the world. What? How he can please his wife. I thought we were supposed to be apart from the world, Kris. And his interests are divided.
They're saying you should spend all of your resources and time and energy focusing on what the Lord wants you to do.
So I think this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I don't accept this.
It sounds wild.
And again, Paul thought that the Son of Man coming back in his lifetime, that the time was short and that we shouldn't be worried about the things of this world, including marriage. He calls marriage a thing of this world indirectly, right?
Right.
But Ted Wilson thinks the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Why do conservative Christians who also believe this stuff, why do they continue to push this quote unquote command found in Genesis if Paul, their leading theologian, is saying, no, don't do it, dedicate, sacrifice your life in order to spread the gospel.
Yeah, and once again it just shows how they expect other people who don't follow the same qualifications as them should sacrifice everything, but they're unwilling to sacrifice something that means just as much to the other person as it is them.
The hypocrisy is dumbfounding to me.
Yes, it's the hypocrisy. It's terrible.
But I also want to say, you don't have to be a hypocrite on this. Just love who you want to love.
Exactly.
I guess
Like,
that's
that should be the end of it. Like, really, it shouldn't be that hard to explain.
It just strikes me as interesting how suddenly, as you continue reading the Bible, this command gets less and less clear. Even if you want to say this is God's perfect plan, well, guess what? We don't live in a perfect world.
Right. That's what sin is about, right?
Yeah, and I know that like there are lots of conservatives that say, well, being LGBTQ plus is part of a broken world. I don't believe that at all.
No.
But I also don't think that that's what Genesis is even trying to articulate.
It's literally just talking about a scenario where the world was beginning.
Yeah,
And
like
of course you need to be fruitful and multiply in that case. So there's not just
that's
two
the
people
point
on
of an
Earth.
origin story. It
Right,
explains
exactly.
how we got here.
That's what I'm saying.
It's not prescriptive. It's an
It's an
origin.
explanation.
It's an explanation as to how we got here. And I mean, the creation story in of itself is like completely non-scientific. So there's a lot of weird stuff there we look at today and we say, well, that doesn't make any sense. Oh, God created land animals and then technically water animals and then land animals.
Yeah, get it right, Justin.
As if there's not amphibious animals.
Poor froggies.
Like, it was weird. It was March 3rd yesterday, and I'm walking in the park, and I see a frog jump into the water. I'm like, why is there a frog out in winter? Our
Because it's
climate
been
is broken.
warm.
But anyways, but I looked at that frog, and I thought, wait, is that a water creature or a land creature? Because it just jumped from the land into the water, where it seems to be safer. Bro, I'm so confused.
I just had a joke pop into my mind. This is so dumb. The frog is the bisexual of land and water animals.
Frogs be bi. According to Alex Jones, they're gay, but okay.
I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the freaking frogs gay.
Turn the frogs gay. Turn the frogs gay.
Do you understand
I'm not
me?
strong,
Turn the
strong.
freaking frogs gay.
Turn the frogs gay.
We should probably wrap it
We
up.
should probably wrap. We're okay. We need to wrap this up. Okay. So, anyways, where were we?
I don't know. We started talking about frogs.
I think we basically
We're
have
done.
summed it up. All right. So, how far are we into the Ted Wilson video at this
I think
point?
that was about 10 seconds right
we
there.
are. Oh, look, we're at 2 minutes and 9 seconds. So we still have about 10 minutes to go in this thing. We are plodding along. And
We're doing great.
I'm sure I still have a lot of things I want to say about the whole creation thing. So we'll see how it all goes. But hopefully this has been helpful to you guys and just kind of understanding some of the pushback that we think should be given when it comes to these conservative talking points, particularly in trying to delegitimize the LGBTQIA plus community, because there's no reason why we should be doing that. That's ridiculous. And so we just want to give you maybe another way of looking at that. Right, Chris?
Yeah. Perspective.
Okay, Chris, we're done here for today. And so there's nothing left to do now but to offer our benediction.
All right, let's hear it.
Here's your benediction for today. Oh, kiss me beneath the milky twilight. Lead me out on the moonlit floor. Lift your open hand. Strike up the band and make the fireflies dance. For silver moons sparkling, so kiss me. Gay frogs.
What? I don't understand.